So coming into the system, seeing this madness. Now you go all these years later and you take Shahada and you become a Muslim. Mm-hmm. What was the big change between the madness to now that you become a Muslim? Was there still madness, or was it a little bit different? Like, was it the time become a little bit easier now that you took in Shahada and you started praying? And
I would have to say the time didn't become easier because you still had to deal with situations. Mm-hmm. You know, I don't know, you were there where the riots and broke out in Avenal. That type of situation was in other institutions also. You know, where you still had the protective mechanism of the racial unity. When things take place, regardless whether or not you're Muslim or not. The unity of the group. Takes I would say takes precedence.
Yes.
To a certain extent.
You're talking about the unity of the group of the African Americans?
The African Americans and Hispanics and those type of things, because even though you were Muslim, there still was a little, fine line in interaction between, a person of a different nationality and those type of things.
Mm-hmm. Just because you followed a certain faith, that doesn't mean you get a pass right off the top.
Yeah.
There's just still your color, your skin, the racial divide.
Defines where your allegiance.
Exactly. It's still there.
It's still there. So, struggling with that, I was more or less, I guess the person who didn't really have the so-called racial allegiance. At least I wasn't open with, the allegiance with the racial allegiance, because I never grew up like that. Mm-hmm. And when I was in the military, I didn't, I had people from, all different ethnicities, because we had to work as a group in the military. So I still held on to that, and basically when you saw stuff like that, you say you had to use the least method,
method of least resistance.
Condemnation.
Yeah.
Of condemnation and stuff for in the heart. It's.
The method of least condemnation.
Yeah.
It's in the heart.
Yeah.
Because you can't do anything at that point.
You can't do anything about it. You can't say anything about it. Because you put yourself in a dangerous situation. By trying to be out there and controlling situations that is beyond your ability to control it. So,
one thing that I tell people, especially in California, if you didn't go in with any kind of racism, you're going to leave prison in California with some kind of racism embedded in you, because that's how strict the politics are in California. It's segregated by race. Me being Latino, I even have some resentment at the other Latinos, the Mexican gangs and so forth, because I ran with the blacks. But this bitterness, this kind of enmity towards my own race, it got embedded in me because of the environment in prison, because I was a target. So I can only imagine, just how it is for others as well.
And even like I said, even in his situation where he associated himself with blacks and being Muslim at the time too, that's a whole different protected arena. Where it would be noted, that Isa's Muslim. So that's like hands off.
It gets a pass before,
because it can cause a big conflict, with the Muslim community itself.
Okay.
Where you don't touch the Muslim itself, regardless. Because there was situations where we had white Muslims, and the protective mechanism, goes around that, where the white Aryans or the skinheads or these other groups that were inside the institution at the time, they would pressure the white Muslims, saying, "Hey, you can't associate with that," and then the blacks would step in. The black Muslims would step in and say, "What do you mean? He Muslim? He praying? He go to Juma? Hands off?" That type of situation. And I've seen when I was at CRC, there was a situation where the whole yard blew up because of that.
Because of an issue with a Muslim.
Because of the issue with the Muslim, or an issue with a white Crip. They grew up with blacks. and the Crip, we say the Crip car,
Exactly.
you know, be like, no,
Yeah.
you know, this is our home, you know, and the whites would be like, oh, he can't be hanging out with y'all and such and such and such, and then the whole thing just
So they would rather have the white Crip hang out with them, the supremacists and the skinheads and the Aryans,
exactly
that has nothing culturally aligned with them,
Exactly.
and see him.
and see him
Yeah.
associated with
Yeah.
another group.
And the institution itself, the officials, I mean, this is almost written into the code, not the code, but the policies, because your dormitories are separated by race. Your lunch times, meal times are separated by race. I mean, a lot of policies and guidelines in the prisons
Yes,
solidifies this racial divisions in the California prisons.
exactly.
And almost they're powerless. The administration is
silent,
powerless.
Yeah, it's like
Yes.
silent approval.
Yeah, because they're
Well, it's an easier. I mean, if we wanted to be real, we would say, well, why don't you address the racism and start having programs and the same, desegregation programs that they had in the 50s and the 60s that they tried to teach people to get beyond that. So this is CDCR. We're talking 2017, right? They could, if they wanted to put money, millions of dollars, instead of going into the pockets of the COs and the CO organizations and so forth, that could go into programs to start working towards, but it's just easier for the system to say, okay, whites over here, blacks over here, Mexicans over here, others over here, and let's just,
Now, like I said, the new concept is what they call the special need yards, and this is how they're
the SNYs.
Yes, this is how they're incorporating integration now inside the institution.
They call them program yards.
They call them program yards, yeah.
When you first go into the system,
So they don't even
now,
call them SNY anymore?
No,
it
called
was special needs,
it's called a program.
and then SNY,
Yeah.
and now it's a program. Yeah.
That's the initial thing.
Seems like they have fun changing the names.
Yeah. So when you first go into the system, they give you a choice. They ask you, do you want a program or do you want to go to the screw up yards? They consider general population where we were at. They consider that to be
Exactly.
the screw up yards.
Would they say
where all the
screw up
gang-
yards?
Yeah, they would say that. That's where all the gang members, all the activeness, this is going on. Or you can come to this beautiful SNY yard, sensitive need yard, or program yard, and you can program. There's no racial politics. There's nothing, but there's more stuff that goes on over there.
Yeah, well, we had a student here who went to there, and that's where all the homosexual prisoners who are
And
being,
basically
they
that's
go
what
in there, and then he said, now what's happening is you have homosexual gangs.
Yeah, they got what they call Deuce Fives or whatever.
Deuce Five, gay boy gangsters.
Yeah,
they just
so it's just, I mean, you can't run away from it. The gang issue.
Well, the whole thing is with that, someone has to control the drugs. So that's what it boils down to.
You mean the gangs are to control the drugs?
Yes, someone controls the drugs.
And how are the drugs getting in?
Well, that's another
Exactly.
So let's talk a little bit about your family. When you took Shahada in '93, did you let your family know immediately, or like what were their reactions after you converted to Islam?
Well, when I converted to Islam, yes, it was immediately I told my mother, and father. My mother, she was kind of like, boy, I raised you better than that. So I had to go through a whole scenario on what brought me into Islam, and I told her, your whole thing about our upbringing was to educate us. You bought us, the books, you put emphasis on, graduating from high school, which I further went into college a little bit. And you did all these different things because you weren't able to do it. I said, but in the period of time that I came up, my education was different than yours. My environmental situation was different than yours, and I began to study all these things that you kind of promoted. That's what I've done, and it brought me to this point where I feel that Islam is better suited for me, and that's it's really due to you. Why I'm embracing Islam. And
Did you explain it to her like that?
Yes, I did.
Oh wow!
And she was kind of like, "Well, I don't know, But my father, he was totally with it, and he wanted to know, well, exactly what were you reading? So there's certain books I had, had the red, and he would go and buy them.
Wow.
You know, and I believe that, you know, if I had the opportunity to have been involved, you know, in his life prior to his passing, you know, into his life, you know, right after I had embraced Islam, you know, that might have been a possibility that he might have embraced, you know, and became Muslim, because he was very interested in some of the things that, because he used to get the fish from, you know, the Nation of Islam. They was not going to do with the fish. They had the newspaper. He knew all about that. At the time when African and the afros and those type of things, he encouraged that type of stuff. You know, we all had our afros. He had his pick, and he was picking it out, and that type of stuff. So he was really with African history. You know, when we joined the African Cultural Center. You know, I used to play congas for the African Cultural Center.
Oh, wow.
Yes.
This is in Buffalo.
This was in Buffalo.
Oh, wow.
So, and he encouraged that type of stuff. So he was, you know, he's really kind of influential in me saying, yes, this is a good decision. And he came out and visited me at the time when I was married inside the institution. My wife house that was in Long Beach, he would come down and stay with her. He did that like 3 or 4 years. Stayed there 30 days, and he would come in and visit me, and we would talk and those type of things. So he didn't have a problem with it. You know? But my mother, she kind of, over a period of time, you know, I guess it kind of grew on her, because she never really said anything other than what was good for me. You know, I guess she could see that, you know, I started to education. You know, I went through electronics courses and my achievements in electronics and all these other different things. And I start sending that, and you see, like, look at your brother. Look what your brother's doing. Look at such and such. You know, that type of thing. So, see, it worked for me. You know, she didn't have a problem with it.
So now you spoke about how your family reacted. Now, how did the other inmates or how the other prisoners who knew you before Islam, how did they react to your conversion?
Well, you know, the previous life, you know, prior to Islam, you know, people test you. You know, they test you with the weed and, you know, and that type of situation. And they say, you still smoking a little bit? And, you know, that type of stuff. And I'm like, no, I don't do that. You know, and they know I used to be a kind of a lush, because that was the thing about being inside the institution. There still was a sense of holding on to certain things. So I smoked a little marijuana here and there, and they knew it, you know, because that's what I did. So now after the embrace of Islam, I had to shut it all down. And it was like they couldn't believe, like, you know, I didn't want to smoke weed anymore. You know, they couldn't believe, you know what I'm saying, I didn't want to smoke cigarettes anymore and those type of things. And I said, man, you know, I'm Muslim, I can't do that. You know, that's it. That life is over with. So they just used to watch to see, you know,
Waiting for you to slip.
Exactly. Are you serious about what you're doing? You know, and then it just gets to the point, oh, the brother doing his thing, the brother going to Muslim, you know, don't worry about him no more. You going to the masjid?
Oh, we lost a good customer.
We lost a good customer, you know, you going to the masjid. Bye.
Pray for us.
It's crazy, but, you know, and then, you know, those associations, they began to, you know, fall to the wayside, and, you know, because as you become involved in Islam inside the institution, you start to see them still in the same thing. You know, they on the yard talking about, you know, what's going on in the neighborhood and that type of stuff. And, you know,
well, it was like you were saying earlier about you visited the neighborhood you grew up in Buffalo, and the people down the street who are sitting on the porch
still drinking.
Same people after 40 years
still doing the same thing on the porch drinking. I was just like, wow, really?
So after your conversion, how much easier was it to learn about the faith? Did you have knowledgeable brothers in your community at that time? Was it easy to practice the faith being around these brothers? And what were some of the mistakes you made as a new Muslim?
You know, when I embraced Islam, I had progressed pretty fast, you know, because I began to take on, you know, study of Arabic and those type of things. And after I did my 6 months at San Quentin, because I had to take a CADX program, that's a psychological evaluation for, you know, whether or not you're rational or, you know, sane enough to be released. That's what that program was all about. And at the time, most lighters had to go through that. They shut that program down. I was one of the last ones to take that program.
What is it called?
CADX.
CADX?
Yeah, because they had CADX, they had CAT-T, and other programs where you know they put people on medication and that type of stuff. So, so I was like one of the last to go through that because they stopped funding it, and so I was one of the last ones to go through that. As a matter of fact, I had resisted going because I knew they was getting ready to shut the program down, and you know I had did some paperwork and this type of stuff to keep from going to San Quentin. And when I got to San Quentin, because I had resisted it all the way until I got to San Quentin. Then when I got to San Quentin, then he come and they say, "Oh, we see we have this paperwork, but you don't want to be in the program, or you still feel that way?" I'm like, "Well, I'm here now." You know, you're sitting up here now, so okay, we're gonna do the program. And thank you know, alhamdulillah, I did because that's where I embraced Islam. You know, and so. Yeah, so you know it worked out, you know. So after I embraced Islam, which was like 30 days after I had gotten there, because I left in June. I embraced Islam in July, and that's another thing too. I was married at the time, so you know my wife, when I embraced Islam, she was like, "I knew you was going to be Muslim. I knew it, because I could tell by the way you were talking, you were a Muslim," you know.